What does one say to an ancient Nephilim ghost?
I suppose you start with...
Yeah, 3 cheeseburgers, 2 large fries, 2 chocolate shakes, and 1 large Coke.
And some flapjacks.
Too early for flapjacks?
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy, and we're back with another Diablo 3 Season 30 video. This is how to perfect and build any character in the game. Now, this isn't exclusive to Season 30. You can use these principles off-season. You can use them in any season going forward to try and improve your character to the best of your ability. Now, we're going to go through how to set up any build, how to find the pieces. We're going to talk about how to craft primals and the most important one for them. We're going to talk about legendary gems, soul shards in particular for Season 30, modifiers on a build, how to improve your pieces, augments, the concept of don't worry about it being perfect, and then Paragon, and then we'll just wrap up and do a conclusion. I'm going to do a little bit of an example on this Crusader. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some other classes, because this build, whilst it's going to be a good example, because I think lots of people will be making a Crusader, in terms of its difficulty and complexity, is quite an easy one, I think, to do. So if all of that sounds useful to you, thumbs up brightens my day. Do subscribe if you're enjoying the Diablo 3 content. Right, just overall as a general kind of starting principle, you need to think about how long you're realistically going to play a season. Because if you're going to play for the full 3 or 4 months, you can afford to wait and get everything absolutely perfect, because there will just be the time. If, let's say, you're only going to play up until, for example, the next Diablo 4 season, which is the 23rd of Jan, then of course you've not got that many more days to finish off your build and perfect things. So you're going to build that into your calculations. How much time do I have? How much resources do I have? How much do I want to spend on this particular build? Is there another build that I want to set up and use this process for as well? Now, yesterday's video was all about how to get as many materials as possible. So we've covered so far this season how to get tons of Forgotten Souls, how to get the Primordial Ashes, how to get the crafting mats, and of course bounty materials, the ratio for reforging and that sort of thing. So hopefully go back and watch those videos if you need to, and that should put you in a position where you've got plenty of things to actually use to improve your build. Okay, so let's just pretend we're setting this character up from absolute scratch. We don't have a Crusader with the correct build, or maybe this is going to be a second character. Well, the first thing you need to do, of course, is to get all of the correct pieces. So you need to either watch a build video prepared by myself or another content creator, or head over to maxroll.com to look up a build guide so you can work out what pieces it is that you need. In terms of getting a set, let's say I want to make a different Crusader build and I don't have the pieces. The best way to go about getting the actual set pieces is to just roll pants, trousers in the UK, whatever. They're, generally speaking, as a rule of thumb across every single set in the game, one of the cheapest items to get. Just keep doing this until you get 5 or 6 pieces of the set. Now normally it's going to be faster to use 5 and do the Ring of Royal Grandeur, but what you can do is you can basically go to convert set item in the cube, and then once you've got your 5 pieces you can just flip them around. So let's say we were setting up Roland, I'd get 5 pairs of trousers and then I would just reforge them, convert them into something different. Now when you do this, be on the lookout for really good gloves, because this is a kind of a little bit of a hack as to how to get really nice gloves. So let's say on this Crusader I really want attack speed, I really want crit damage, I really want crit chance. I might be able to even add a full stat to that. Let's say I really wanted cooldown. I don't think I do on this Crusader, but it might be a build that you require cooldown, attack speed, and double crit, so essentially quadfecta gloves. Well, using this method in the cube, every 6th or 7th time, depending on how many set pieces there are, you'll get a drop of gloves. They will not be ancient, they can't be augmented, but gloves are really tricky to roll because of the stat pressure on them, because you do need at least the double crit on all of them, and then you might need attack speed, you might need resource cost reduction, you might need cooldown. They are very, very hard to roll, so be on the lookout for good gloves. Helms, again, can be a little bit like this. Obviously, this is a craftable helm, but let's say we were going to use the Aegis of Valor helm. Well, we would look for Fist of Heaven's damage, we would look for crit chance. So again, any non-ancient pieces that pop out, if they are difficult to roll ones, you know, maybe shoulders, maybe you need area damage and cooldown and all res or something like that. Do be mindful that some of these non-ancient pieces can be very usable. It just kind of depends. Okay, in terms of setting up things like weapons and shields, well, again, if I've got another character, so for instance a monk, if you roll shards on a monk, you can get some Crusader shields. Now you can't get legendary Crusader shields, but you can get the yellow ones, and then you can upgrade them in the cube and basically try and get the Norvald shield. You can then, of course, craft two-handed flails and upgrade them in the cube. Let's say I wanted to set up a wizard. Let's say I've played Crusader all season, I really want to make a wizard. Well, I know I can come in here, I can go to orbs, and I can keep going until I get a Talrasha or a Firebirds. Again, use that same trick, get 5 of them, convert them, level up my wizard, and that way. So getting pieces is kind of just like that. You can convert in the cube, you know, and that's how you get your basic build going. Of course, there are certain things like convention of elements, which are just class, not class specific. So this dropped on my monk, but it's brilliant for my Crusader, so I can keep it. Stone of Jordan, again, this will drop on Barb, it can drop on any of the classes, and really you only care about the elements and the elite damage in a socket, so again, it's very transferable. Squirts is a very transferable item. You want double crit, you want some elemental damage, particularly for this Crusader build, because Stone of Jordan works with any elements, it now becomes quite easy to put this together and get those pieces. So base level, just get the pieces, and then we start to talk about improving the build. Okay, so let's move on to weapon. Now, the most important thing you can do with any build when you're setting it up is to get a primal weapon. This is a source of absolute massive damage. So let's just see if I've got a non-ancient weapon in here, just to show you the difference. It does not look like. Let's craft one, and then I can show you. Right, okay, we have now got a non-ancient weapon. So let's just pretend that is our first one. Of course, the damage roll on it is going to be lower, all of the stat rolls are going to be lower, and if we just look at this crafted primal, this is a 41% damage increase. Now admittedly it's got the extra socket added to it, but you can add the socket to this one, so it is just a straight 40% damage upgrade, and that's without considering the legendary gem. So it's so powerful to use the recipe in the cube to craft up a primal weapon, upgrade legendary item. Now, you might need specific stats. I probably want to test one with attack speed. So this is a piece that I potentially can improve. I can take off the vitality, and I can go for the attack speed. But because on the season I'm using the soul shard with the poison, getting that poison roll has been quite handy. So this is going to be a tricky piece for me to upgrade, because I need poison damage, damage percent, and then I might want attack speed. So hitting those 3 things is going to be difficult. Quick tip on this: if you do upgrade a primal, you don't like the look of it, do salvage it, because you'll get just over half of your primordial ash back. Don't just, you know, stick this one in, fill and hit transmute and reforge it. You do want to be careful. These primordial ashes can be a little difficult to come by, particularly if you're playing multiple builds. So step 1, always of a new character, when I'm setting up a new build and I can afford it, step 1 is always get the weapon in the cube and make it primal. Okay, next let's talk about legendary gems. You of course want to get these as high as possible. Same for the soul shards, which are the theme for season 30. You want to unlock these to level 3. You want to get the correct power that you want for your build. So I've been rocking this. Get extra poison damage on my Crusader. It's also rolled, I think, with elite damage, which is great because that helps the build out a lot. It's not something useless. And same for the soul shard. I've got strength on there. I would prefer the melee or range damage reduction, but this is good enough, and it's not something rubbish like armor or all res. And again, I've basically gone for the power here, that we get the attack speed and crit on cooldown. I've got another one that's got lightning damage on that I'm kind of toying between testing, but again, just make sure you get the correct level 3 power on your soul shard. If you do happen to get the second unlock that you want, then so much the better. And then legendary gems, just play them as high as you can. Now, whether that's solo pushing or preferably just jumping into groups, because playing support in groups is quite easy. It's not particularly demanding. You don't need a good character to do so. And then of course, just get your gems up as high as you can. Okay, next is modifiers. Now a modifier is something that will basically either add to your damage or multiply it. Now this game is pretty horrible at letting you know which is additive and which is multiplicative. I tend to just take the view of just thinking whenever something says, like in this convention of elements, gain 200% increased damage for a single element for 4 seconds, I just want that modifier to be as high as possible, and I will sacrifice a piece being ancient to get the higher modifier. So an ancient piece just drops with higher stats. Of course, things like crit can't be any higher than 50%, crit chance can't be any higher than 6%, attack speed can't be higher, cooldown can't be higher, area damage can't be higher. The only stats that change are the plus damage on rings and then your main stats, so like strength, also things like vitality, armor, all res. All those will be better on an ancient item, but on an ancient item with a modifier, it's much more important to get the very, very high end. So it would be better to have a non-ancient conventional elements with like 195% than it would be to have an ancient conventional elements with like, I think the lowest roll is 150. So if you had a 161 convention that was ancient, but you had a 195 convention, but it had similar stats on them, well, even though one's ancient and theoretically better because it might have more strength, you want to go for the non-ancient version. That's why I'm using these gloves. They've got 10% crit. I'm going to roll the crit damage up to 50. They've got attack speed. So for all intents and purposes, for those 3 rolls, this is a primal piece. It's got max crit chance, it's got max attack speed, it's going to have max crit damage. The only thing I'm missing is 250 strength, or potentially cooldown if I wanted quadfecta, and then I wouldn't be able to augment it because I can't augment a non-ancient item, but a little bit more on that. Now, of course, this build is a cheap build to put together. The reason for that is this is the only modifier in it. It's the convention of elements, and in terms of modifiers, this is maybe one of the less important ones because it rolls around on a 4-second cycle. It's not like something like, let's say, Dark Light. Let's say if we used this in the build and it had up to 1000% and it rolled on a range of maybe 800 to 1000, you would want to get very close to that 1000%. But because the Crusader, the Fist of Heavens, has got the Norvald set, which is a fixed modifier at 200%, because we've got the Guardian set, which is like a fixed modifier for the build, because the Cassette's Cord of Righteousness and the Darklight go in the cube, we've got all of the max modifiers. We've got the Squirt's Necklace, which again is just a fixed modifier at 100%. So therefore, all we need to do is improve our elemental rolls, our crit chance, our elite damage, our crit damage. So it's not too bad. Some builds can be quite difficult, like Necromancer, trying to get Crispins to roll well, trying to get other modifiers like Gears of Dreadlands Demon Hunter, Hunter's Wrath, the Siri Satchel. You need the modifiers to be well, so I would generally speaking concentrate on getting high percentage values on modifiers rather than going for the juicy ancients. Right, so assuming now we've got all the pieces for the build, we've got ourselves a primal weapon, we've got nice modifiers, we're kind of going to move into improving the pieces. Now improving the pieces might well mean jumping from, you might start off with a non-ancient modifier, you then get an ancient one that's got a equivalent modifier, so you swap to that one, and then you might swap back to a non-ancient one with a very high modifier. But in terms of improving the pieces, you need to have a think about your build and think about how you're going to spend your resources. Now, as you do rifts, you're just going to get random drops, so you're hoping to pick up a couple of your items. Maybe you get lucky and you get a nice pair of pants, maybe you get a nice pair of boots. If you don't, you want to target your blood shards at the cheapest possible options that you can get. So we're talking pants, boots, chest, shoulders. This is probably where I'm going to spend my blood shards because I want to save my bounty mats for the really hard to get things. Now, as I say, again, this is quite a cheap build to put together. It's not something really difficult. Raycor, I put that together in Season 28. Very expensive, lots of rolls and lots of items. But I'm going to spend my blood shards where I think it's the easiest difference to get them to make. Now, something like a Shield of the Steed, there are so many shields in this loot pool, it's really hard to hit this with blood shards at all. So I think it's a waste of my resources to try and put blood shards into this. I'd rather get another copy and then we're going to reforge that in a cube. So First off, shards, spend them on things that are cheap, like belts, for instance. They're quite cheap. There's 2 belts potentially. I mean, we could get primal, we could get a primal vigilante, we could get a primal cord of righteousness, in which case that would be fine. We could put that on the character. But something that's 25 blood shards, don't be rolling blood shards on amulets, rings, on weapons. It's just too expensive. Okay, the next major area for improving your pieces is to run Visions of Enmity, because you can go through it and you can just pick up the green set pieces, and you can just pick up rings, belts, amulets, things that don't take up much space in your inventory. And if you run, I don't know, 10 or 20 visions in a row, you're likely to pick up a couple of ancient pieces. You know, fingers crossed they're for the build that you need, but like say you're just playing the Crusader generally, you might well find that you've got quite a few nice ancient pieces collected as you go. Now once you've put a bit of time into this, doing the speed GRs, rolling your blood shards, upgrading things in your cube, you can always just straight up upgrade things. That does take a lot of time. It's a little bit intensive on the resource, so I'm not a massive fan of that, but it could be. You know, let's say we're stuck on gloves. Let's say we say, okay, well, we want to take a bunch of goes at improving the gloves. Well, we can just simply go and upgrade them in the cube, but this is really time consuming simply because there's just like a bazillion set of gloves in the pool. I've got lucky here, I've got another Gauntlets of Valor, but I could have easily upgraded 30 pairs of gloves and got none. So again, you need to think about that. I think the upgrades are much more useful actually trying to hit something like the shield, because again, I might well decide to play Legacy of Dreams Blessed Shield, I might decide to play the Condemn Khan Crusader. So there's 3 Crusader shields in the pool that I'm quite interested in having a nice copy of, so I would have spent a little bit of resource on that. Something like a Necromancer, going for one-handed scythes is good because you might want 2 or 3 of them for different builds, and all of them are useful. They've all got modifiers, they've all got a place in the game. So again, just think a little bit about how you wish to spend your blood shards. Now, assuming you're not going to sit here and do a whole bunch of upgrades with your Death's Breaths and with your materials, then the next thing is going to be reforging stuff in the cube. Now, we talked again in the previous video about how to get these materials to do upgrades, to do reforges. You basically want about a 10-to-1 ratio between your Forgotten Souls and your lowest bounty mat. So I'm at about right, so I know I can do about 80 reforges before I'm completely out. Now I don't like running below 500 Forgotten Souls, just because you might want to actually re-roll some stuff. So aside from that, I'm quite happy to upgrade some pieces. And what I've done is, obviously I've played this character quite a bit, and now that I'm at the point where it's quite unlikely I'm just going to get a random upgrade from a drop, because realistically my shield, whilst I don't really love cooldown on here, I would maybe prefer vitality. This is certainly good enough. It's got the Fist of the Heavens damage, it's got 9.5 on the crit, which is nearly perfect. 10 of course would be perfect. I've got nice boots, they've got the toughness stats I want, I've rolled on the 15% Fist of Heavens damage. The weapon could be upgraded, but I've talked about the problems with that. The Convention of Elements is really nice. I'm not going to get a better one than this. This is just, I can't ask for any better. The gloves could be improved, but it's going to be really difficult to do so. Same for the shoulders. I'm not sure whether to have life percent or cooldown here, but other than that, I've got really nice stats on them. They're almost like primal shoulders. Again, my chest plate is quite nice. I can roll the reduced elite damage. It's got really nice high strength roll on it. So really, I'm looking for a better squirts. I'm looking for a better Stone of Jordan, and of course the Guardian set is craftable. So again, going back to yesterday's video, if you've got tons of these crafting mats, you can of course make loads of them and improve things. So I'm now down to only 2 pieces that can realistically be improved without a significant resource investment. To get a better weapon might take me lots of primordial ash, which I don't want to spend because I want to spend that on other characters. Reforging gloves, I could reforge, I think probably approximately maybe 150 pairs of gloves and still not get anything better than what I've got in the non-ancient form. So again, I'm going to say I don't wish to spend the resources on that. I'd rather go and put them into another build. The helmet, I think I could craft better because I probably do want crit chance and Fist of the Heavens. So that's a potential one that I could do. But the 1000 vitality is quite nice, particularly playing solo. This is a little squishy at 130, so having that vitality I'm kind of okay with at the moment. And then the Guardians, Again, these are really nice, but they are lightning. And at the moment, my best Stone of Jordan is this fire one here with fire damage, crit and elite. So I'm going to roll off the strength for a socket. That would then mean that I would need a fire guardians. I would also need a fire squirts. Now, I do have this squirts here from a monk, which has got 76 on the crit and 9.5 on the crit chance. So worst case scenario, if I don't get anything better, I can roll fire on here, I can roll socket on the ring, and I can just simply go and craft another pair of guardians braces. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some of my bounty mats to try and get a fire double crit squirts. If I get a really nice physical double crit squirts, then what I will probably do is go and find Stone of Jordan to reforge to try and get that to physical. So again, as I've been playing the game, I've just been collecting up potentially useful pieces. So there should hopefully be a few Stone of Jordans in here for me to choose from. I've got one here. This was, if I got holy on my squirts, I've got a physical one here. These aren't great pieces, but they are at least available for me to use and to reforge. So that's kind of my next step to go about this. Now, of course, this is kind of talking about perfecting it, and as a probably prerequisite step, we would talk augmentation. Adding augments is very important to adding power because your main stat is just a modifier. So I've got 35k strength, that is a 35,000% modifier on my damage. Of course, this is achieved by putting 125 augments everywhere. How do you do the augments? Well, in Season 30 there are two ways. Well, three really, but two that most people will use. You can either run Petrified Scream and get yourself a Whisper of Atonement gem like this, and you can augment it on with the Flawless Royal Ruby. Or what you can do is, let's say you upgrade a Soul Shard to level 3, you don't like it, this will also count as a 125 augment. So I've kind of, as I've been looking to explore different shards, whether it's been for my support builds, for this build or for another build, if I get it and I think it's just a straight dud, then I've been putting it in my stash and making a mental note that I'm going to use that as an augment. Now, you want to augment as fast as possible, so don't wait until everything's perfect before augmenting it. You can always go over an augment later or replace a piece. It's not the end of the world. Like, my initial drafted a weapon did not have poison damage on it, but I auged it anyway because it was primal. I knew I was going to use it for a few days until I found a better weapon. I was going to turn my attention somewhere else, and because augment gems are quite easy to get, unless you're really wanting to push yourself on like 10 or 15 builds or all builds, all classes, then the augment gems I think are quite easy to get, and you just want to augment as you go because that will allow you to do higher GRs, which will allow you to get your gems up higher, and it'll allow you to have more Paragon points, which again will add into that kind of main stat. Now, the final couple of points I've got are basically, don't worry about things being perfect. Don't worry about every single roll being exactly correct. Don't worry about all the gear being perfect, because having played to 3000 Paragon in Season 28 and trying multiple builds, it's just so hard to get more than one or two builds absolutely where you want them. It's, hundreds of hours of farming, reforging, and ultimately, whilst it is fun to improve your character like this, I much prefer actually just playing the game and blasting rifts and seeing what the game drops me. I will use the tools that we've talked about in this video to improve a build, but ultimately, I don't want to spend like 10 hours crafting. I just want to actually play the game. So don't worry too much about things being perfect. Just do the best that you can, and maybe sign off on a couple of pieces. Like, let's say these guardians here, they're not perfect. They don't have 6 crit chance. They don't have 20% elemental damage, but they're good enough. They're good enough for what I want to personally achieve in the game. And then the final thing again is Paragon. Don't sweat this, guys. Of course, more Paragon is better. You will see people on the leaderboard with 2.6k at the moment. If, let's say, these players stick around to the season, they're going to have 6,000-7,000. People still bot in this game. People still run the game 24/7. Just don't sweat it. Do the best clear that you can do. And again, ultimately, Paragon does, whilst it is a really massive thing for pushing your build as high as possible, it does, of course, have a diminishing returns. Like, if I go up to 40,000 strength, that's not that much of an increase from 35,000 to 40,000 modifier. It's very small. It's only 10%. but that extra Paragon's going to take me like loads of hours of grinding. So again, don't stress too much over it. So I'm going to try and find some pieces to reforge. So I'm going to do that now, and we'll let you know the outcome in a minute. Guys, for 5 crafts in, I've got a holy and a double crit. It's a little low on the crit damage, it's a little low on the holy, but just looking at it in comparison to the one that I've currently got, it would kind of be about an 8% upgrade. I think we have to knock a little bit off for the elements. It would require me redoing my braces and getting them as holy. It would make me have a little look for a Stone of Jordan that's holy. So I'm possibly going to hang on to this one and start working on a second Squirts necklace reforging, just that I've got the option here in case we do hit a really nice Stone of Jordan that's got holy on it. Now this is a good example of where sometimes an ancient piece is not necessarily better, because this popped out ancient. Initially we were interested, it's got the holy damage because we've literally just crafted the holy Squirts, but it's got quite low on the holy, it's got quite low on the elite damage, it's got area damage, which is not a stat that we want at all, so we would be having strength instead of something like crit chance or crit damage. So again, this is a piece that actually is now probably no good, and I wouldn't use it. So guys, we've done our reforging. I've actually decided to put fire on that original Squirts that I showed you that had cold. It was from the monk. I'm going to continue to look for Squirts because it can drop on any class. Again, I don't really want to spend too many bounty mats into this. I might decide I'm going to set up maybe a leap quick bar before I go off and play a bit of D4. I've also decided to keep the original Firestone of Jordan. So still, it's a 5% increase here. It's a 6.9% increase here. So we are actually getting quite a decent bit of damage out of these two. I'm also going to augment up this Stone of Jordan, so let's just see how much difference that makes as well, I suppose. Okay, so that's brought the Stone of Jordan up to plus 7.3% damage and actually a little bit of toughness as well. So I'm hoping that with these two pieces I'll now be able to get to that sub 3 minute GR 130, and this build, as far as I'm concerned, aside from rolling the crit damage up to 50, which I'm going to go and do now, is pretty much done. So sheet damage at the moment 5.6 million. Let's see where we are once we're done. And there we have it, guys. We decided to stop at 49%. I don't think I'm going to quibble over percentage. We up the damage to just under 6.3 mil. We do have the Firestone of Jordan, so again I need to go and craft a better pair of braces, but aside from that, this build is now done, and this is kind of how I would go about perfecting a build. And then I'm signing this Crusader off as being done, and I'm going to go move on to another class. I hope these tips, I hope this kind of thought process helped you out. I hope it helps you out with future characters that you might build. I've been the Filthy Casual. Take it easy, guys. Peace.